Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us from on this live stream from any part of the globe. It's a delight to be having this first Somnia Developer Education series with you. Today, we are going to be having a conversation about dev tools on Somnia. And with that, I have to mention that we are going to be done here in about 30 minutes. So please, I crave your indulgence to stay to the very end. So these sessions are dev focused. And if you're a developer, you'd want to hear about all the things that we are going to be talking about today. So just before we go into the rest of the session, a quick introduction. My name is Emmanuel. I work with the developer relations team here at Somnia. So that means I'm in charge of all things documentation, developer support. So if you have been active in the communities, you know I am your go-to person for when you have technical problems. And of course, if you are building a project and you need some STT, just share with me what you're building and we'll send you some STTs. So I'm also in charge of developer programs. This is one of our developer programs. So look out for more coming your way through the course of the year. Of course, we'll be going to be having many amazing initiatives led by us and with partners, of course. And if you want to chat with me about your projects, you can come over to the Discord. You'll find my Calendly in the Dev Announcements channel. And you can schedule a call with me at any time. And we can always talk about your project, talk about what you're building, and just generally give you technical feedback on what it is you're trying to accomplish. And that's my handle here on X. You can always follow me and then engage with me. Right now, we are yapping about Somnia. So community is the critical to all we do, and then we see all the love, all the encouragement, and we encourage you to continue and keep the conversations going. So moving on, our agenda for today, we're going to be looking at dev tools on Somnia, and then listed among those dev tools are the following that you see on your screen right now. If you go to the ecosystem page, you'll see that these have already been also announced. We will take a look at Anchor, Omi, Protofire, Sequence, and TEDWeb. I do have to mention that this is an introductory session. So we are going to take each of these projects at a technical depth that we can explain to you. But over the course of the coming weeks, rest assured, we'll take each of these projects one after the other and present code labs on each of them. So basically, what are dev tools, right? So developer tools are which DevTools is the short form. They are software, library, any utility at all that can help you as a developer to build, test, debug, and deploy your apps. So examples are IDEs such as Remix, framework, frameworks, of course, where SDKs fall into that category, a set of APIs and debugger, and any automation tool that streamline developer workflow. So the current dev tools that we have, like I mentioned, during the introduction of the agenda are Anchor, Omi, Protofire, which is provides a graph service for us, Sequence, and TEDWeb. And this being a live session, if you do have any questions for us, you can drop them in the chat and then we'll attend to each and any of those questions. I can see the messages that you are sending in. Gsomnia, 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 everyone. It's amazing to have everyone from every part of the globe joining into the session, and I can see some of the developers here with us. Yes, I love you, Somnia. We love you too. Awesome. So we'll start with the first one, right? And that is Anchor. So if you've been following us closely, you would have come across comms that we have put out where we have been encouraging developers to use the Anchor Anchor RPC service for interacting with Somnia, and then we have shared stats on why we encourage developers to do that. One of the critical things that we do here at Somnia is to work with partners that we believe we build the best developer experience for services that we integrate. So basically, Anchor it's another Web3 infra provider. They offer ROPC services and staking solutions, and that includes services that they provide to Somnia. So Somnia developers building on top of Somnia can leverage on Anchor's ROPC to carry out very fast transactions on chain. So just a quick demo on how that works with Anchor. I'm going to show you a dashboard that connects to a very simple application that has been built where transactions are finalized in near second because it leverages on the Anchor ROPC, right? And then, of course, that link that you see on your screen, it's contains a referral where if you go to Anchor to go sign up right now with this link, you will get some tokens some credits that you can use to start carrying out testing and building and using the Anchor RPC to build on top of Somnia. So just a quick view of the dashboard that I said I was going to show to you, right? This is a very simple application. It leverages Anchor's RPC to carry out on-chain transactions. So we are going to talk more about this later when we get to the TED Web section and then talk about account abstraction via TED Web. So this particular application that you're looking at, it uses account abstraction to carry out a social login experience for this particular wallet that is connected. We'll talk about that later, but I just want to show you how fast it takes to settle a transaction when you use the Anchor ROPC, right? So this is just one transaction that has been finalized almost immediately, just within 1 second of that button being clicked. So Anchor provides a dashboard service where you can go and then view all your transactions that you have had with Anchor using the RPC. So this is very important for developers who want to understand how users are interacting with their particular application. So this is my dashboard, but to be able to access this dashboard, you need to get a private key from Anchor, which you'd receive when you sign up with that particular link I shared that I'm going to go back to that screen. So you can see that it is tracking all requests that I have sent to that particular simple application that I showed you, where I'm leveraging the Anchor RPC URL. So you can get statistics over your DApp usage in an hour, in a 24-hour time period, or whatsoever time period that you want. And when you go premium with the Anchor service, you'll be able to read more insights into how users are using your application on top of Anchor. So this tool is available for developers building on Somnia to start using immediately. So then again, sharing the URL, you can go to anchor.com and then pass in the UTM referral, which is Somnia testnet, and you'll be able to get some credit to be able to interact with Anchor. Moving quickly through the services that we have, because we want to keep this very short, very focused, and very developer oriented. Before discussing the next two projects on the list, which are OMI and Graph Services by Protofire, I have to mention to you that both services are graph services. And graph services provide subgraphs, which are indexing solutions, allowing developers to query structured blockchain data without the need to scan the entire blockchain. So one would ask, basically, why is this important? What does this mean? And how does this look like? Before giving you a more detailed breakdown, I want you to have this mental model as we go through the rest of the session. So what you see on your screen, it's the blockchain on the left, and then a user interface on the right, which could be mobile or desktop. And then we have the Anchor subgraph services sitting pretty in the middle. So as against having to carry out read operations where you are maybe calling its get logs or it balance, you can simply set up a subgraph services that tracks all on-chain events, caches these events in a DB, and then you can easily query those events and then pass them on to a user interface. Having explained that with a graphical illustration, what are the key components of a subgraph and what does this workflow look like? So a subgraph typically has two files that it's used to. Sorry, I'm getting messages and I'm trying to read through the questions while I'm making the presentation. Yes, of course, I'm going to answer all of these questions through the course of the session. So there are two critical files for a subgraph that are very important. That is the subgraph YAML, right, where you outline the particular um, conditions for the subgraph that you want to deploy, and then the GraphQL, the subgraph.GraphQL, where you describe the structure of the indexed data from the smart contract that you want to read via the subgraph. So the workflow, if you cast your mind back to the image that I shared, you have the user interface and then you have the network, right? And then you have the subgraph service sitting pretty in the middle. So the workflow is that you first of all have to like have a smart contract that has been deployed and it's emitting events before you'd have to set up a subgraph service for that smart contract. So when you set up a subgraph service for that particular smart contract, the subgraph captures and processes all of that data and then takes that data and indexes it off chain in the queryable database. So that way you can use a simple API to retrieve data from the subgraph without having to like use read operations. Just imagine a situation where you have one contract deployed and then you want to read through the entire events that have been emitted through that contract. So typically, another solution would be to like query the entire chain and then be filter by that particular smart contract address and then track all of the events that have been emitted. But with subgraphs, you can just focus on one smart contract and track all of the events emitted on that smart contract and be able to query that data, have an API where you can build out user interfaces. So just a quick run through on the Protofire service as well and how it is different from the OMI service. I would show you the process of deployment, which is basically just the tiny difference, right? So both services make use of the Graph CLI. And when you use the Graph CLI, you pass in a simple command where you call the graph service and then pass the deploy command. And my token here represents the directory where I have the subgraph YAML and other subgraph services in that particular directory. I want to pass it to this particular service, which is the provided by OMI and which is available at somnia.osgraph.xyz, right? So what is important when you use the service is you must always pass your API key. So you can find a resource right now in the OMI Labs doc where you can go learn how to start deploying subgraph solutions on top of Somnia using the OMI tool. Again, this service is already available for developers. And just to quickly run through the second graph service, which is Protofire, it's still the same process, right? You first of all have to deploy a smart contract, have events on that smart contract, deploy a subgraph that would index the data from that smart contract, store it, and then you then have an API that you can use to retrieve that data and build out real-time applications. So if you have not been interacting with the Somnia documentation, this is your call to action to go to the Somnia docs, go to the partner section, and you would find resources on how you can start using subgraph services to build user interfaces for your application. So a quick run through on how the commands for using the Protofire service is different from using the OMI service. So you'd see that it still makes use of the graph CLI command, which you'd have to install globally on your machine. And then when you deploy, the only difference here being that the particular URL that you pass here, it's somnia.chain.love. So this service is also available for use, and developers can go take the service, plug it into their applications, and start building. Yes, please keep sending in the questions, keep sending in the comments. I can see them on here. Thank you. And I'm going to answer the questions as we go get to the end of the session, right? This is a developer education series. So it is very much different from our developer hangouts. Here, the goal is to walk you through using Code Labs services available on top of Somnia that developers can leverage on and start using right now to build their applications. And of course, all of this content is available in our documentation. So just a quick look at one of the examples in the docs, right, using the graph service. So this is a tutorial that walks you through from beginning to end on how you can deploy a subgraph for a very simple ERC 20 token smart contract. So if you follow this guide from installing the graph CLI globally in the prerequisites, and then simply walking through um, the tutorial, creating a token contract, and all of these guides. This is like the first part of the tutorial where you have to like create a token contract using hard hat. So for this particular example, we simulated all the events on chain so that we would have events that we can index when we call our subgraph. So you can go to somnia.chain.love to begin using this service immediately. But to use this service from Protofire, you do have to set up an account with Protofire. And right now, the service is actually free for developers to use. You do not have to pay at this point to use the service. But it does require authenticating your profile to ensure that you are not a bot before you can start using the service. Of course, the tutorial walks you through how you can take a step-by-step action to ensure that you have access to the service by adding your card for initializing yourself as a user. So after you have gone through that process of setting up an account on somnia.chain.love, you want to initialize your subgraph, and this guide again walks you through that process from initializing the particular subgraph from the directory where you have deployed your smart contracts, and then updating the various elements that you need for your service. So like I did mention earlier on, we need to define a schema.graphql file that tells the subgraph that these are the particular events emitted from this smart contract that we want to track that we want to index the responses and make it available via a UI. So then again, the command for deploying the subgraph. Please note that you have to pass your unique token, which you will get from somnia.chain.love to be able to deploy your subgraph to the graph services. So important to this lesson is querying your subgraph, right? This requires writing query language to be able to, for example, in this particular tutorial, fetch latest transfers, get transfers by addresses, get transfers in a time range, right? Where you just simply pass an argument and then you tell the graph service that this is the particular data that I want from this smart contract, and this is the order by which I want it, and this is the number that I want. If you go to the documentation, you would find a guide that walks you through building a user interface for your subgraph services where the data that you have already indexed from the smart contract event, you can take that data via a single API and build out a functional user interface. So this is an introductory session and it is meant to just be very brief. So not to dwell very much on particular components, as there will be opportunities in the future to go more in depth with these sessions. I'm just going to continue on to the end of the presentation and hopefully have enough time to take your questions. And of course, please remember that we always have developer hangout session on Discord. So you can always come in and join us every Thursday at 10 a.m. UTC. Moving on. So the next service on our list is the sequence service. So the sequence service is also a Web3 development stack. It's designed for developers and very heavy for gaming developers who would find this a whole lot useful, right? It enables us, create smart wallets with account abstraction features, and of course, it integrates various Web3 SDKs that enable developers to interact with React, Unity, and Unreal Engine. And more importantly, it has built-in fiat on off-ramp solutions, which will be coming in the due course of time. And moving quickly away from sequence, a critical infra partner to talk about, it's the third web service. Please note that there is no preference for any of the services being talked about here. Developers can go straight into the ecosystem, pick any of the dev tools, and use them for your project. TEDWeb, of course, it's a Web3 dev framework enabling developers to build, deploy, manage smart contracts. So for building, deploying, and managing smart contracts via TEDWeb, TEDWeb has audited smart contracts from simple ERC20 tokens to NFT tokens and even NFT marketplaces. That developers can take this code, deploy it, and have access to the TEDWeb UI where it even comes with code examples that you can use to demonstrate and walk through your project. So moving on, we are going to have just a very short demo session um, on TEDWeb and how it looks like. But before then, let's talk about a couple of the features that are available via TEDWeb. Of course, I've already mentioned the ability to deploy smart contracts using TEDWeb, and I have made reference to the TEDWeb SDKs. If you have not been leveraging the docs, this is the time to go to the docs, pick any of the tutorials in the tutorial section, and then have a walkthrough from beginning to end to understand how to use any of these tools. And again, if you are a developer, you are currently building a project and you need STT tokens, please kindly feel free to mention me on Twitter and I would send you STT tokens, or you can come into the Discord and request for as much STT tokens as you need. And TEDWeb also enables account abstraction, just like Sequence, with a gasless transaction experience. When we started today's session, I mentioned that the example that I was sharing, I will come back to it and then walk you through how it is possible to build that kind of service. Before going on, I want to say thank you for staying on from the beginning of this session to this point. These are dev education sessions that would have every week, and we also have the developer hangouts on Discord where you can come join us to learn how to build on Somnia using Somnia Dev Tools. So using TEDWeb, it's fast and easy for developers. They have a very robust documentation with SDK guides in it, and it's compatible with Somnia. Then again, this means that if you want to build with TEDWeb on Somnia, this service is already available to developers. And here are links to resources in the docs that you can go right now to go visit, and then you can start using the TEDWeb service. So while I give you some time to study that URL part and understand where it leads to and how to navigate it, I am going to go back to a different screen share where I'm going to walk you through how to interact with smart contracts on top of TEDWeb, and also I am going to walk you through how you can query graphs using the subgraph service by writing query language. So a quick one first, before we head into using the TEDWeb service, we'll just do a slight recap of the the subgraph service. So sharing, going on to share a different screen right now. So this is an example using the Protofire graph service to query data on chain. Right? This is also derived from the example in the documentation. So you can go ahead to somnian.chain.love/graph. This is graph number 17 for the deployed graph services, and you can start interacting with this particular graph solution right now. So that's another thing about the graph. The services are open source. That means for any smart contract address, any developer can deploy a graph service and then be able to interact with that particular smart contract. So this is a very simple query that takes all the transfers from this particular smart contract, and then it returns the data where the ID is the transaction hash, and then the from, and then the to. So you have other arguments on here. So you have other arguments on there that you can go interact with and then learn how that service works. So just not to ensure that we do not make this session any longer, I'm going to keep pointing you to go back to the docs, to go reference the docs. And then just to close out quickly, what is it that we are looking for right now for developers to build on top of Somnia? You must have heard Paul, our CEO, talk about the reactive blockchain experience. So with the ability to settle transactions in less than a second, we are asking developers to build on-chain solutions where you have the EVM chain, Somnia, as your complete database experience. So if you have been building on-chain products before and you have experienced limitation in terms of the service, now you have dev tools to provide a very unique user experience where you can move away and abstract all wallet solutions where that requires activities like approve, activities like signing transactions, and then you can move straight into an account abstraction enabled experience if you so desire. You can move into a social login experience if you so desire. And then you can also move into a gasless experience if you so desire and give users a very unique experience of using blockchain applications, interacting with blockchain applications without even realizing that they are interacting with Web3. So I'm going to close out this section in the next 5 minutes. But just before then, I want to ask that for developers in here, if you are yet to, please kindly submit your projects to us so that we'll know what you are building. This is important because we are very keen on developers and Somnia is very heavy on community. So we put our developers first, we put our communities first, we put your interests first. So we want to highlight what it is that you have been building. Massive shout outs to all the indie developers that have submitted projects so far. So if you have been racing a dino, popping balloons, having a color palette experience, you would know what it is that I'm referring to. And I want to say a big word of encouragement to these developers to keep building. We see you, we recognize you, we encourage you. And for those who we have not seen, who we have not recognized, please come over to Discord. Share with me what you are building in the dev charts channels. And then we want to like highlight what you are working on to the rest of the community. And of course, if you're building and you require SCT tokens to keep building, kindly reach out to me. I'm looking through the comments to find any questions that I can answer and then quickly answer those as we close out this session. A user is asking what specific features of Somnia testnet are designed to support gaming and metaverse applications. It's important to note that we have provided an EVM experience with sub-second finality and low latency. What that implies is that you can take your gaming experience currently, just as it is, possibly building on top of PlayFab, bring all of that experience on top of Somnia, and there would virtually be almost no lag, right? Because for your on-chain game experience, you could typically want to take 100% of your game on chain or some particular components of your game on chain. But building on top of Sonia means that there will be no lag for your users as transactions are settled near instant. Yes, Sonia, it's a global service. G Somnia to everyone. Thank you very much for being on the call. If I missed any of the messages on here, I'm just going to come over to Twitter or YouTube after this stream and then get to answer those questions. And if you're not yet following us on YouTube, please kindly head over to the YouTube channel and hit the subscribe button. It has been a pleasure presenting this session to you. We are going to be having more of this subsequently, and then we are going to be featuring more projects, more partners, more for developers, and of course, we are still going to keep having the sessions on Discord, the developer hangouts. So show up for those, and I look forward to see you. Bye, everyone. This has been a delightful experience. Thank you for joining us on this first edition. See you in the next one.